Sean, what do you consider attractive?
Someone who's sure of themselves, Paul.
You like confidence.
Confidence.
Okay.
Because I don't want to say a physical trait.
I'll do it for you.
And seem like a pig. Oh, Paul, go.
Noted pig, Paul Gallant, with his 1980s mustache that some have compared to Joseph Stalin, is a shallow pig. Some people think I like the men, which, hey, not that there's anything wrong with that. But what I like, I'm shallow. Generally like, people who are around 5'3", nice abs, nice butt, probably Italian. Like that's my type. Okay? We're sharing things with the class. But everyone in this world finds something unique that attracts them above all other things. Some people are attracted to QAnon believers. Some people are attracted to insane clown posse, mosh pit lovers.
They're called
Juggalos.
Juggalos?
You're right,
Yeah,
Sean.
juggalos.
Some people are attracted to people who are still wearing their masks at every single second they possibly can. Different strokes for different folks. Some people, and it's a shame that we have to admit this, even like others who maybe are racist. And then you got the looks and the gym people and all sorts of different things. But let's focus on the R word for just a second, because that is something that the Houston Texans are perceived to be right now. And they have been getting bazookaed to death by all of the hot take artists that you're familiar with. I don't know if you guys were watching First Take yesterday. We every now and then will watch First Take as we get ready for the show because sometimes we need a cup of Stephen A. Smith in our coffee. Stephen A. Smith had this to say about the Houston Texans coaching gig.
You just wanted them to band-aid the issue for the moment to buy you some time before you did what you wanted to do. The Houston Texans organization are an atrocity. They are an embarrassment. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're an African American and you aspire to be a head coach in the National Football League, there's 31 teams you should hope for. You should hope beyond God that the Houston Texans never call you. Not as long as that man is in there, because it's an embarrassment and something needs to be said about it.
It's the low-hanging fruit. Looking for something to get mad about? While Dan Orlovsky just uncomfortably sits in the room with Stephen A. Smith and Michael Irvin? This is an easy one to get mad about. And the optics aren't great. No matter what the Texans did when they fired Lovie Smith, what went into their decision-making, like this is something you're going to be hearing for a long period of time. I thought my friend Figgy over at the flagship station made a great point that it would be nice if the national media actually watched the Houston Texans, subject themselves to a little bit of torture to perhaps change their opinion. But that's how Stephen A. Smith felt. We haven't even gotten to Michael Irvin. Michael Irvin? You thought Stephen A. Smith came in hot? Michael Irvin, right after Stephen A. Smith is done, he pulls out a Fat Man. You've played the Fallout video game franchise. That is a mini nuke launcher and goes even further.
3-13 team. I've never heard anybody say, let's go lose so we can get a first pick. I've never heard one player ever say that to me in my life. And if he did, I'll bust him in his mouth right there in the locker room. So all of this noise we're talking about, we're going to fight him because we won a game, is absolutely crazy. That's that man's job to try to go win a game and to take a mess that all of them have turned into a mess. And I was one of the first ones to start reporting on that mess. I remember, Stephen A., when you had me come in with the DeAndre Hopkins situation. Yep. After I had talked to DeAndre Hopkins, I knew what was going on there. For years, what was going on there. It's a mess in Houston, and they bring these guys in, and they use them as scapegoats. That's the issue. That's the problem. And this is what African-American coaches have been yelling about for a while, and it's blatant right in our face.
There aren't many black coaches across the NFL. It's strange given the amount of black players across the NFL. I think we can all agree on that. I think also, though, you have to add a little bit of nuance when you take a look at the Texans coaching gig. Stephen A. Smith implied some racism. Michael Irvin implied that Lovie Smith lost his job because the Texans won the last game of the season and played their way out of the number 2 overall pick. I don't know that that is actually true. And maybe I'm naive to believe what Cal McNair said in an interview with Jonathan Alexander and Brian T. Smith of the Houston Chronicle, but when asked whether Lovie Smith's decision to go for the 2-point conversion bothered him, McNair said it didn't. I couldn't believe we got it, he said. I thought we were going to overtime. That's why the players are playing. They have a lot of pride, and they want to play next year. To play next year, you need to put good things on film. It's just not in my nature or any of our nature to ask a team to go out there and not win. McNair continued saying, when you look at the statistics, when you look at the wins, you look at how many home games did we win. I know these national guys, they don't study the team like y'all do. Y'all have watched every game. I doubt they have watched every game. During the middle part of the year, it was hard to watch some of those games. Thank you, Cal. I walked a lap around NRG Stadium like I was the Hulk at the end of one of the Hulk TV show episodes, like wistfully hoping that somebody would bring me in and love me. I just got lost in the bowels of NRG Stadium because I needed to take a walk, and I came back and the game was the exact same score. It was I had missed nothing. I had missed nothing in my little NRG Stadium press box prison. Nothing. I missed nothing. Cal gets it. Now, if you look at what Stephen A. Smith said, if you look at what Michael Irvin said, like, there is some truth in everything that they said. I think in the last part where Irvin brought up, hey, the DeAndre Hopkins situation. Yeah, that wasn't great, but that was about Bill O'Brien. That was about Jack Easterby. That wasn't about, I think, Cal McNair. Those two were pointing at Cal McNair. Those two were pointing at this organization hiring guys like Lovie Smith, David Culley to be fall guys. I don't know if I would go that far. So I will play one more clip because this got all the way to CNN, the attractiveness of the Houston Texans gig, whether or not someone should take it. Bomani Jones, who is a guy who has lived here in Houston before and is somebody who I do think is very, very smart, was asked this by a panel of CNN, I guess, reporters who were trying to put the Texans in a box of clearly they're racists.
The whole organization is a dumpster fire. Like, the thing about it is, I'm not exactly sure who should take that job. Where he says no black person should take that job. I wouldn't recommend no white man take that job either. Now, when Lovie got it, you have to remember, word was going around that they were thinking about hiring Josh McCown, who's a former NFL quarterback whose only coaching experience is in high school. And it looked really bad while the league was being sued for discrimination about its hiring practices with coaches. What then happened is Lovie Smith, who has an impeccable resume, wound up getting the job. But nobody was going to give him that job, and anybody else was going to give him a head coaching job. So what the Texans are is a job where I think the last 2 times they've hired black dudes, largely because no self-respecting white man would go take that job. Like, they were down to the people who they felt like had to take the job. David Culley, whose name had never come up in a coaching discussion before, and then Lovie Smith, who probably had his last chance already. So that's how you get here.
Why would he take it? This was his last chance? Why would Lovie take this job?
It pays better than not being a head coach. Like that was the thing. Like, when David Culley got it, like, why would he take it? Because it pays a lot better than being a receivers coach.
Those last parts are true. I thought it was weird that Bomani Jones said that Lovie Smith has an impeccable resume. I mean, that's wrong. I think if you take a look at some of the comments that have been coming out about Lovie Smith, I saw this tweet from Big Sarge Sports last night. Talked to a former player who played for Lovie Smith. I would run through a brick wall for that man right now, but I would never play on a team he was the head coach of or defensive coordinator for. So what does that mean? Is it the Kool-Aid man? Oh, yeah. I'm not going to play football, though. I don't want to get any concussions. I'm not going to play for you out there. Oh, yeah.
In fairness to the Kool-Aid man, he's literally made of glass.
We do sometimes take issue with people calling players glass or soft, but that is true. Sean Mapes, the Kool-Aid man is literally a glass vase pitcher.
He's a pitcher.
How does he break through the brick walls without breaking?
The power of Kool-Aid.
So there's some PCP in that then. Okay, let's just be honest about that. But the rest of what Bomani was saying right there, no self-respecting white man would take that job. It's weird to take it to that extra step. David Culley and Lovie Smith taking that job because that's the only job that they were going to get, that makes sense to me. Getting down to that, I guess, place when it comes to your hiring process, okay, I guess I could understand why there would be a lot of coaches who would say no to it. But I don't know. I felt like Bomani inserted race there. I'd love to talk with him about this further. Those two I take issue with, but he's not wrong about the last part. That's why they got this gig, both David Culley and Lovie Smith. Like, they weren't going to get a head coaching gig, and why wouldn't you take the money? But there's been a lot of woe is me for Lovie Smith, and you're going to have to deal with that going forward, and that's a part of the next guy that the Texans hire as head coach. So my question for you on today's show, the most interactive sports talk show in Houston, is the Houston Texans coaching gig an attractive job? Objectively. Because, yep, they got the number 1 overall pick. They got the number 12 overall pick. There are some young players on the roster who you feel like have some potential. And yet, they've had 4 coaches in the last 3 years, soon to be a 5th. Is it an attractive job? I put this poll out on Twitter, @GallantSays, and thus far, with 119 votes, it's split right down the middle. 49.2% of folks say yes. 50.8% of folks say no. On Twitter, a response from Tim. It's a great-looking job if you're a GM or coach who's going to get to buy his own groceries with all the assets they have, but not necessarily if you're just a guy coming in to coach ball. Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports. Some answers on that one. Jason said, no, it's not. Daniel said, football-wise, yes. Organization-wise, it isn't. That's something they got to deal with. That last part. They have to go out and change it themselves. Forget the perception that people living in this city have of them, where there's either collective disinterest or there's disgust, I would say, with most people in the city. It's about how can you convince a person interviewing for this coaching gig that this is the best opportunity that you have available to you. And again, you're going to have to get through the racism thing, whether it's true or untrue. And I don't think that's the reason that Cal McNair has moved on from David Culley and Lovie Smith. As a texter points out, Mike Meltzer, my friend, has a good point. How many teams interviewed Culley before or after the Texans? How many teams interviewed Lovie before the Texans? Nobody wanted them, but the Texans are racist. Get the bleep out of here. Yeah, and look, I think it also speaks to how attractive the job was for the Texans at that point in time, that those were the guys that they ultimately hired. I don't think many people wanted the gig. That might be different, though, this time around. I'm hoping it's different this time around. You're going to have to probably answer questions about how much say Nick Caserio has. Is he a micromanager? Sounded like he was with David Culley, where he had a headset on. I didn't have a huge issue with that, though, given all the times I'd heard Culley. And I imagine there were some disagreements between Lovie Smith and Nick Caserio along the way over the course of this past season. But it's something they have to deal with. I mean, look, I do hate that all of the news outlets in our country seem to, one, lean either left or right politically, and that, two, that a lot of the news stories that they have seem to be a way where they can put out a headline, get engagement, and throw fresh meat out there to the people who want to get pissed off. This CNN article, after the CNN segment that you heard with Bomani Jones, outlines the following. When Lovie Smith was hired by the Houston Texans in February 22 as the team's new head coach, he said the NFL had a, quote, problem, end quote, with hiring black coaches and diversity. I realized the amount of black head coaches there in the National Football League. There are in the National Football League. I think it's Mike Tomlin and me. I don't know of many more. So there's a problem, and it's obvious for us. And after there's a problem, what are you going to do about it? The NFL has sort of grappled with this. The Rooney Rule is lame. The Rooney Rule doesn't make sense. I think somebody that owns a football team should be able to hire who they want. And I think it's kind of become a joke, the Rooney Rule, where, say in Indianapolis right now, where Jeff Saturday takes over as the interim head coach. Does anyone actually believe that someone not named Jeff Saturday is going to get the coaching gig in Indianapolis? Does anyone feel that way? Like, that seems like a foregone conclusion. It's going to be Jeff Saturday. I could be wrong on that front, and I imagine Chris Ballard has an issue with that, the general manager of Indianapolis. I would think he should if he has any brains, but probably has to go do what the owner tells him to do if he wants to keep his job going forward, a job that he has kept for far too long, in my personal opinion. But anyway, to go back to this is something that the Houston Texans have to shake. Here's the funny part about this post. When CNN contacted the Texans for comment, the team highlighted the moment at Monday's news conference when Caserio was asked why any black coach would consider working for the team. And his response was that individual candidates would have to make their own choices. That's true. But if those individual candidates ask you a question, you're going to have to answer it. And those questions might not just be asked by black head coaching candidates. It could be asked by a white head coaching candidate too. But is this job attractive? There's an ESPN piece that says yes. Jeremy Fowler, Dan Graziano wrote this. The Texans' job is a sneaky good job. The Texans will have an estimated $47 million in cap space and 11 picks in the draft, including 2 selections in the top 12. Players from the rookie class, such as Damian Pierce and Jalen Petrie, flashed major potential. I agree with that. Coming off back-to-back coach firings, a bad look to be sure, the Texans know and seem to acknowledge they must change their ways. They can't afford the status quo. Some top candidates will have this job ranked higher than the average fan might think, though not too high, given the well-documented culture problems there. Graziano writes this. If you were a coaching candidate who was interested in Houston because it had the number 1 pick, and you knew and agreed with the decision about which quarterback to take, then the Texans falling to number 2 in the NFL draft would give you at least some pause because it introduces some uncertainty into the mix. But Houston still has 2 picks in the top 12. So it has some basis for a strong draft foundation as well as a lot of cap space. All of those things are true. Graziano continues. So it's not completely unattractive. Still, the fact that the Texans are hiring a new head coach for the 3rd offseason in a row would make me wonder, and I do believe that there are candidates who would look elsewhere or even consider staying in their current jobs rather than taking one here where there's that much risk of being out after a year. And here's where priorities come in. And this is what I would objectively tell any person looking to be a head coach about this gig. In my own attempt to sell, maybe the Texans go, give me a little finder's fee here to help bring in the next coach. Did David Culley still make his money? Is Lovie Smith still going to make his money? You're not going to get screwed over here. You take this gig, you are going to get life-changing money. And on top of that, after you're done with that life-changing money, you have an opportunity to potentially just walk away from coaching altogether, which, to be perfectly honest, doesn't seem like that fun of a job. I love football. Some of these guys are addicted to football. But, I mean, Sean McVay's burnt out already. And I think more and more coaches are going to be like that. Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals, that's a mutual parting of ways. Kingsbury wants to go to Ibiza and probably, not wear a shirt for the next 2 years and have fun. Honestly, if I were Cliff Kingsbury and I looked like him, who cares what my coaching acumen is? I'm going to have fun. And now I got a ton of money to do it.
It is interesting that McVay, who when he was hired, I think still was the youngest head coach in NFL history, and Cliff Kingsbury, another guy who started his coaching career pretty young. The guys who get promoted all the way to where they want to be super young, feels like they're the ones getting the burnout the quickest.
Yes, I'd agree. And look, these are obstacles the Texans have to get over. This idea that someone might be one and done and that might hurt their coaching career going forward. But you are going to get paid. That's big. Now, maybe you won't ever get another chance to coach in the NFL again. You could look at it as though, say I go 1 and done or say I go 2 and done or something like that. I'm going to get valuable experience as a head coach that I probably wouldn't have gotten elsewhere. And at some point, somebody might look at me. It might be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, if I really want to stick with it. Someone might look at me and say, hey, you get a second chance. Again, uprooting your life, moving to this place, bringing your family, bringing your wife, your kids. These are things that we don't really think about that often when it comes to some of these jobs. And it's life-changing money, but some people don't want to move all that much only to be told to go somewhere else. I'll admit, perfectly honestly, I didn't want to leave Houston for Seattle when I got that job at the Seahawks and Mariners flagship station up there. I didn't want to leave, but there were no jobs for me here. So I took it, and I moved. Honestly, there's a lot of regrets that I have having moved up there. But I took what was available to me. Was it a valuable experience? Yes. Did I get better at my craft? I think so. But, you know, it's 2 years that I was gone from here. I didn't really want to uproot my life to take this awesome opportunity on and then all of a sudden have it taken away from me. But here's the difference. Like, I'm not getting paid world-changing money, life-changing money. No, I wasn't. It's radio, sadly. It used to be fun. Used to get paid a bleep ton in this industry. Sadly, no more.
Thanks, podcasts.
Yeah. Oh, everyone's got a podcast. Like Paul Gallant, the Paul Gallant Show podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify.
Okay.
That's this show. I'm promoting the show.
Oh, I thought you were doing your other show.
I wouldn't promote my own show on this. No. Come on. I have some morals. I have some professionalism. Huh? My own venture. I have a side venture, but I'm not going to tell you about it. You're the one who's like, oh, Paul, God forbid you work off the clock. Oh, man. Sean Mapes just keeping that Texans culture as a part of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Well, all you got is a shrug.
Yeah. Hey.
And where does it rank compared to the other open coaching gigs across the NFL? The gigs that are open, you got the Houston Texans. You have the Carolina Panthers, who were the first team to fire somebody. They got rid of Matt Rule. You have the Denver Broncos, who, of course, got rid of Nathaniel Hackett with a couple of weeks to go in the season. As far as other teams with open coaching gigs, you have the Arizona Cardinals. And there's one more team I'm missing, isn't there? Whatever the case, where does this job rank compared to the other ones? And the other one is the Indianapolis Colts. Name eluded me for just a second. Where does this one rank compared to all the gigs? Let's just go through it off the top of our head. If you're the Carolina Panthers, you are inheriting a situation that gave a head coach a ton of power. Too much power. A situation, though, that you've seen look pretty damn good after they fired the guy with too much power. Once they got rid of Matt Rule and Steve Wilkes took over, the Panthers were one of the more respectable teams in the NFL, considering the fact that their quarterback going into the year was Baker Mayfield. Their quarterback to close the year was Sam bleeping Darnold. There's talent on that team. I would say specifically on the defensive side of the football. And in David Tepper, you have the richest owner in the NFL. So if I'm being honest, I think that the Panthers coaching gig is the number one. I'm not 100% sure of North Carolina's tax situation. I'm not really 100% sure about Charlotte as a city. It does have a good airport. Ever go to that airport? If you ever go, highly recommend. Go to Bojangles. Bojangles is a fried chicken chain that is in the Carolinas. It is so good. Chickens, biscuit, little sweet tea on the side. The best combo that there is. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. Doing a little intermittent fasting right now. It is.
Oh, nice.
Been doing it the last couple of days. Yeah, it's weird. You wait until 6 o'clock to eat, and then I'll go in my kitchen. I'll just eat whatever's there.
Yeah, that's the nice part, because I'm not disciplined enough to actually be like, oh, can't eat that. It's like I can't eat right now, but later, coming for that cake.
See, I don't even have cake in my place because I'd eat the whole thing. Like if it's in front of me, I'll eat the whole thing. But anyway, no one cares about my intermittent fasting.
5.25 tax rate stated. North
okay,
Carolina.
that's not too bad. That's not too bad. Panthers, number one coaching gig. Would be nicer if Charlotte was on the coast, but all right, maybe you're a mountain person. You like hiking. Huh? What's the number two coaching gig? Because after that, you have the Broncos, the Cardinals, the Colts, and the Texans. Broncos have a new ownership group. Broncos have a fan base that gives a damn. I would say of those 5 teams, I think the Broncos have by far the most diehard fan base. Charlotte / the Panthers, that is SEC / Clemson territory. Phoenix barely cares about sports. I think that Indianapolis cares about the Colts, but I don't think they're as diehard about the Colts as Denver is about the Broncos. And of course you have here, and I don't think anyone cares about the Houston Texans right now. I'm not going to put the Broncos at number 2. Because the problem is right now, you have to wonder if Russell Wilson is still the same guy. You inherit Russell Wilson by default. So, of all the coaching gigs that are out there, because I'm unsure of where Russell Wilson stands, I think the Broncos coaching gig would be last on a power rankings of the top 5 available open jobs. It's all about Russ. And you got to wonder how much longer in a league where defense can be good for a couple of years but doesn't typically stay good forever, is that defense going to stay the same level that it used to be? So I think the Broncos' job is the worst. I think the second worst job is tricky. It's between, get this, the Colts and the Cardinals. So think about it from the Colts' perspective. Chris Ballard is still your general manager. Why? Jim Irsay is an emotional, reactive owner who marches to the beat of his own drum. Also, the job is in Indianapolis. Of all of the places listed there, that place is a hellhole. Have I ever been? No. Will I ever go? No. Good thing Vanessa's not here to defend it. All I needed to hear was my dad, world traveler, master salesman that he is, once say, yeah, the most depressing city in the United States of America is Indianapolis. It's a cute little town where it's easy to walk around everywhere. Great. Awesome. Is it by the water? No. But there's shrimp. Where? Where's the shrimp from? Is it from Gary, Indiana, the only part of Indiana that's on the coast? Like the most ratchet city possibly in the United States of America? That place is third world. Gary. Have you seen pictures like of people just walking through abandoned places? Yeah, okay, the Colts don't play in Gary, but that's where the shrimp is probably coming from. That's my assumption at the very least. I think the Colts gig is a worse gig than that of the Arizona Cardinals, who I say are the third worst gig, which means the Texans are the second best gig. Oh, you didn't think that was coming, did you? With the Cardinals, Kyler Murray I do think has potential. I do. I like Kyler Murray, the player. The attitude of Kyler Murray I don't like. And there is a part of me that wonders if that is something that can change over time. If he is beaten down by seasons of losing and just getting the absolute bejesus smacked out of him, is that Cardinals gig going to perhaps be a little bit better with the coach, with a quarterback that maybe is a little bit more open to people telling him what to do? So I think the Cardinals gig is the third best, the third worst open gig. There does seem to be, with the Michael Bidwell as the owner, a mom and pop kind of feel to the Cardinals, extending Cliff Kingsbury, extending Steve Keim. Not smart considering that they just canned them, but hey, I guess they have money if they're willing to can those guys after just 1 year on the job. They're in a situation right now, Arizona, that is, I think, in some ways similar to where Houston was maybe last year, where you have some scandals that are hanging over the organization that you're looking for a little bit more clarity on. And number two, look, the job security thing might be a concern to you. But if you were to look at this Houston Texans coaching gig, the expectations are as low as they possibly can get. No one is expecting anything from you, you know? Everyone's going to be mad at the general manager and the owner, not you, the head coach. The last two firings have sort of guaranteed that for you. Your general manager, who hopefully you will be able to have some input with, is going to have the 2nd and 12th overall picks in this year's draft, as well as 5 picks in the first 3 rounds in this draft. So you can add more young talent on. There's no quarterback, and there is a massive talent deficiency. But I feel like as far as jobs go, if you weigh the expectations, if you weigh the ability of this team to add talent, I think this is the second most attractive coaching gig. And I feel weird saying that, and I do think the job security thing is going to be something you have to explain away. But if I were to power rank all of the available coaching opportunities in the NFL, I got the Panthers at 1, I got the Texans at 2, at 3, I have the Arizona Cardinals, 4, I got the Colts, 5, I got the Broncos.